Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Dana, managing partner of Dana Whiting Law, and I have today with me once again Mr. Trevor Whiting.
Hey Matt, how are you?
Good.
Could be afternoon, depending on when people are watching
yeah,
the video.
it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, today, Trevor, we're gonna kind of finish up our filming session, talk about private family foundations. And as we work with these higher net worth clients around the country, they have a lot of questions about a family foundation. Tell us briefly what is a family foundation?
Yeah, I like to call, a private foundation basically a charitable piggy bank for our clients, right? When our clients are wanting, they want to give to charity, they want to maximize some philanthropy, they want to educate their kids on how to give to charity and do it efficiently, then we create a private foundation structure that allows them to make a contribution and get a tax deduction for the contribution to this foundation that they create, and that through their board of directors, which could be our clients and their descendants and kids and things like that, they manage it and they operate that foundation, and they decide what public charities out there are going to receive a distribution or a grant from that foundation.
Yeah.
And so it becomes like a charitable piggy bank. What money do you want to give to charity? Let's set it aside in here. Let's manage it and take care of that money in this foundation. And then as the need arises and they identify, we want to give some money to, the Cancer Society or the Humane Society or something like that, then they can start doing those grants from that foundation.
Yeah, they're looking for a big tax deduction up front, but don't want to give that to one specific charity right now. I like that analysis of the piggy bank. So let's just use an example. Let's say a client creates a private foundation. They put $1 million into it. When it's going in there, they get a deduction just as though it was going to a public charity, correct?
That's right.
Now, is a limitation any different on how much of that deduction they can use against their adjusted gross income?
There is a limit. There is a different limitation,
Yeah.
and you get a smaller piece that you can apply against your AGI,
Yeah.
against your adjusted gross income.
Yeah.
And it's limited to 30% of your AGI as you make that
Instead of maybe
Yeah.
50%,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
But still, you're getting a nice deduction. So if a guy put in $1 million, and as long as his AGI is, say, $3 or $4 million, he can use that deduction in 1 year.
Right.
And the same concept, if he couldn't use it in 1 year, there would be the 5-year carry forward.
It
and all
carries
that
it
stuff.
forward, and they can apply it
Yeah.
against future income.
So he puts the $1 million in, he gets the deduction, client's happy. Now they have this board of directors. It's usually the client and some family members. Walk me through every year what is required of them that they must do, and then maybe add to that what they could do.
Yeah, just in general, every year they're going to file a return with the IRS, and because the IRS wants to make sure that the funds in this foundation are being used for charitable purposes.
Yeah.
And so what they say is that every year that foundation needs to distribute 5% of its value.
So $50,000.
Public charity.
Yeah.
Yep. So in that case, there's $1 million in there. $50,000 needs to be distributed to the public charities. The assets are going to be invested some way. They're going to grow in value. They're going to shrink in value. So every year, that's part of that filing that goes to the IRS. We say this is how much was in there at the end of the year, and we calculate how much needs to be distributed for the next year.
They could do more.
They always can do more.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that piece that goes from the foundation to the charity, that's not a taxable event to anybody. They're not going to get a deduction for that. They got a deduction coming into the foundation.
Right.
When the foundation pays that. If they don't distribute the 5%, then that becomes a tax. Tell me what happens if they don't distribute anything.
Yeah, that gets bad. There's penalties and interest and things like that on that. So, we always want to make sure that they're distributing that 5%. But the foundation is a tax-exempt organization, so the interest and the income that's earned on the assets that are inside the foundation are not subject to tax, with some exceptions for business income generated inside the foundation.
I think, Trevor, we talk about a lot with our clients, when's the best time to create this foundation? And the answer is it depends on what we're using the foundation for. Now, you and I talk a lot about on these videos about the washing machine, which is the testamentary charitable lead annuity trust that's paying out to a foundation after you die. That's an estate tax strategy, right?
Right.
And with those types of foundations, we can actually create it at the time of death. We can have a mechanism in their revocable trust saying when client dies, if they want to get an estate tax deduction, they can create the washing machine there. And we've done that quite a bit. Where's some events where they could use a family foundation while they're still alive?
Yeah, anytime that, there's certain charitable trusts that we talk about, the washing machine's that testamentary charitable lead annuity trust. But there's times when we'll recommend to clients that they do a charitable trust during lifetime. So there's the charitable remainder uni trust that we've
The
talked
CRUT.
about before, the CRUT, and then a non-testamentary, so just a regular CLAT, a CLAT, charitable lead annuity trust. So both of those trusts have components where either on this part of the charitable lead trust, the charity is receiving a distribution up front for a period of time, and then the remainder interest goes to either back to the donors or to their descendants. And then on the charitable remainder trust, somebody's getting a payment for a period of time, usually the donor, their lifetime or something like that. And then the charity gets a remainder interest. So in both of those situations where something's going to go to charity, we can always name this private foundation as the charity to receive those distributions.
Yeah.
And so it might be created up front to receive the lead interest on a CLAT or a remainder interest on a CRUT. So and then other times clients just want to give straight to charity without the charitable trust involved. And so we can set up a foundation. They can fund it in advance. They want to use those funds to educate their kids on philanthropy and giving back to society and things like that.
Yeah, I like that discussion. We often refer to these charitable remainder trust or the CLAT as split interest trust because charity has an interest for a period of time and the family members have an interest for a period of time, depending on whether it's a lead interest or remainder interest. And as well as I do, Trevor, this isn't a one and done strategy. We've got clients that have multiple CRUTs and could even have multiple CLATs, right?
Right.
And they can create these things. And so, Trevor, I don't know where you define this, but clients ask, when's the perfect time for me to create this? In my mind, and I'm interested to see if is any different. But I would say they at least would have to have $1 million that they want to put in right out of the gate and get that $1 million deduction. And they're also thinking of in the future, they're going to do a remainder trust or a lead trust. They're going to do something while they're alive. Now, if there's clients that aren't ready to carve off $1 million and, right now, then, maybe that foundation's better created in the revocable trust. But talk to me, would you tell a client when's the perfect time to create that?
Yeah, I'd probably be very similar in that discussion that, there's administrative costs and expenses related to running a foundation. And so it needs to be funded with a significant enough piece to make that worth it, make it worth those costs. And so at the very minimum, at least $1 million going in up front. But if it's not going to be funded until later on down the road at the end of a charitable remainder trust or as a washing machine on the revocable trust, then maybe we don't create it until that point in time and we leave it for that future event. And there's other vehicles we can use in the meantime, if clients want to have that charitable piggy bank.
Yeah.
And, during lifetime.
So the last concept really is the administrative cost you talk about. And, tell me what a client would do if they don't want any administration at all. What's the alternative to, the private foundation you've laid out, the Big Thunder is the $1 million deduction up front. It's a piggy bank where we actually help charity. What's the alternative if client says, I don't want that administration, but I still like the piggy bank concept?
Yeah, the alternative is the donor advised fund. And, we can go to the community foundation or to some of the financial institutions. They they'll hold money as a charitable institution, and basically it's the same thing. It's a charitable piggy bank. Donors can contribute the money. They can direct where the money is going to go, which charities are going to receive how much and when.
Yeah.
And yet that organization, the community foundation, for example, is going to take care of all of the back office administrative work and eliminate that burden from the client family.
So if a client's wanting to do a couple 100,000 instead of $1 million, the donor advised fund.
Right.
At the $1 million mark, there is some administration, but we hold the client's hand, CPA holds the client hand. We think that the cost of administration's worth this more flexible of having your own foundation.
Right.
I think one big difference too, with your own foundation, you get to control how it's invested and how you grow it. Where with a donor advised fund, I don't know if they give you any input on how they invest that?
Not really. You're turning it over to the institution in general for investing. There's some organizations, although there's been some proposed regulations, so there's some back and forth where maybe the family's financial advisor can be involved in the investments, but that's like I say, there's been proposed regulations that might change those rules.
Well, thanks for the discussion today on family foundations.
Yeah, you're welcome, Matt.
Great conversation.